এভরিওয়ান, ওয়েলকাম টু অ্যাপেক্স ইনস্টিটিউট। আজকে আমরা আমাদের সাবজেক্ট ইংলিশের টপ ওয়ান লাইনার্সগুলো সলভ করব ফ্রম দি 4 এসেস যেগুলো আমাদের সিলেবাসে হয়েছে। আমরা কভার করব ড্রিম চিলড্রেন, সুপার অ্যানুয়েটেড ম্যান, জিবি শর্ট ফ্রিডম আর ফ্রান্সিস বেকনের অফ স্টাডিজ। এই ওয়ান লাইনার্সগুলো তোমাদের রিভিশন করাতে সাহায্য করবে। আর এই পিডিএফ যদি তোমরা চাও, তোমরা আমার গ্রুপে, যেটা কমেন্ট লিঙ্কে আমি গ্রুপ লিঙ্ক দিয়ে দেবো, ওখানে আসতে পারো, আমি তোমাদের পিডিএফটা দিয়ে দেবো। আচ্ছা, ফার্স্ট হচ্ছে ড্রিম চিলড্রেন। কোন নাম দিয়ে চার্লস ল্যাম্ব এসেটা লিখেছিলেন? ইলিয়া। ইন হুইচ ইয়ার ওয়াজ ড্রিম চিলড্রেন পাবলিশড? 1822। ইন হুইচ এসে কালেকশন ডাজ ড্রিম চিলড্রেন রেভারি অ্যাপিয়ার? এসেজ অফ ইলিয়া। এটা কিন্তু খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। হোয়াট ইজ দ্য সাবটাইটেল অফ দি এসে ড্রিম চিলড্রেন আ রেভারি? হু আর দি টু চিলড্রেন ইন দি এসে? জন অ্যান্ড অ্যালিস। হোয়াট ওয়াজ জন এল ইন ল্যাম্বস লাইফ? ল্যাম্বস elder brother. What kind of writing form does the essay belong to? এটা হচ্ছে অটোবায়োগ্রাফিক্যাল এসে, যেখানে লেখক নিজের সম্পর্কেই লিখছেন। What device does the essay mainly employ? Reverie or dream vision? Whom did Charles Lamb truly love in real life, reflected as Alice in the essay? এই যে অ্যালিস যে চরিত্রটা ছিল এসেতে, সেটি আসলে ছিলেন অ্যান সিমন্স। What emotion predominates in the essay? কোন ইমোশন রুল করেছে এসিটাকে? নস্টালজিয়া। Who took care of young Charles and John after their mother's death? তাদের গ্র্যান্ডমাদার ফিল্ড। What does Lamb recall about grandmother Field? Her deep pity and love. যে সেই গ্র্যান্ডমাদার ফিল্ডের তার প্রতি ল্যাম্বের যে ভালোবাসাটি ছিল, সেটি এই এসেতে ল্যাম্ব ফুটিয়ে তোলার চেষ্টা করেছে। What is the setting where children sit and listen to Lamb? His armchair. How does Lamb describe Alice, the little girl in the essay? As meek-eyed. এটাও কিন্তু খুব ফ্যাকচুয়াল। And resembling her mother. Next, what do the children gradually start to do at the end of the essay? Fade away. What truth does Lamb realize when the children vanish? They were dream children, never real. তারা সত্যিকারের চিলড্রেন ছিলেনই না। What contrast is shown between John L. and Charles in their youth? John was healthy and bright, Charles was weak and timid. What kind of love story is reflected in Dream Children? Lamb's unfulfilled love. Which literary quality makes the essay touching and personal? Pathos. Which family tragedy is recalled with pain in the essay? The death of John L. Which figure is idealized in the essay as a symbol of strength and pity? Grandmother Field. What literary style is Lamb known for that appears here? Conversational and intimate style. What effect does the essay's ending produce on readers? A mingling of beauty and melancholy. Why is the essay called a reverie? Because it is a daydream blending memory, imagination and longing. এরপরে আমরা দ্য সুপার অ্যানুয়েটেড ম্যান করব। হু ইজ দি অথর? চার্লস ল্যাম্ব, অবশ্যই। হোয়াট ডাজ সুপার অ্যানুয়েটেড ম্যান ইন দি কনটেক্সট অফ দি এসে? Retired due to age or service. How many years did Lamb work at the counting house? 36 years. At what age did Lamb begin his office career? 14. Why did Lamb take his job at an early age? To support his sister and family after a tragedy. What is Lamb's initial reaction to retirement? Disoriented and overwhelmed. What does deliverance means in the essay? Freedom from office drudgery. Which theme does Lamb explore in the essay? Duty, freedom and joy of leisure. How does Lamb compare his retirement to a bird freed from a cage? Which style is Superannuated Man known for? Reflective and autobiographical. What impact does retirement have on Lamb's view of time? Time feels like an endless resource. What is the greatest joy of retirement for Lamb? Freedom to read and contemplate. What advice does Lamb give through the essay? Appreciate leisure and freedom. How does Lamb describe his work life before retirement? Monotonous and exhausting. What metaphor does Lamb use for freedom from work? A caged bird set free. What physical effect did work have on Lamb? General weariness. What does Lamb mean by I have lost all distinction of season? Retirement erased routine. Time feels free. Which literary device is frequent in the essay? Irony. How does Lamb describe his workplace in the atmosphere? Cold and mechanical. What personal quality of Lamb is reflected in the essay? Introspection and wit. How does Lamb feel about his former employees? Grateful for their understanding. Why does Lamb call himself superannuated man? He retired due to age and long service. How does Lamb describe the sudden transition to retirement? Overwhelming and strange at first. What does Lamb dream of during his working days? A life of uninterrupted leisure. What lesson does Lamb impart in the essay? Retirement offers a new perspective of life. এরপরে জিবি শয়ের ফ্রিডম। অথর তো জিবি শ আমরা সবাই জানি। In which year GB Shaw's Freedom delivered as a radio talk? 1935. What is Shaw's main argument about freedom in the essay? True freedom is an illusion. Humans are bound by nature and society. Name the radio where Shaw delivered his talk Freedom. British Broadcasting Corporation. What does Shaw say is the common hope concerning freedom? Wishing to do as one pleases all the time. According to Shaw, what natural necessities bind all humans? Sleeping, eating, dressing, moving from place to place. How does Shaw distinguish between natural and unnatural slavery? Natural slavery to nature, unnatural slavery to human society. What is Shaw's attitude towards the capitalist concept of freedom? He satirizes and criticizes it as deceptive. Which economic system does Shaw support? Democratic socialism. What does Shaw say about government and freedom? Most actual governments enforce your slavery and call it freedom. Which enlightenment principles does Shaw critique? The idea that freedom is a natural human right. What example does Shaw use to show slavery? Sleep, food, clothing, and shelter as basic needs. According to Shaw, who manipulates the idea of freedom? The master class and capitalist leaders. Which thinkers does Shaw refer to in his analysis? Karl Marx and Thomas More. এটা কিন্তু খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ প্রশ্ন, নোট ডাউন করে নিও। What is Shaw's advice about dreams of perfect freedom? Wipe out from your dreams the hope of doing as you please all the time. What does Shaw call the unnatural jobs? Work imposed by employers and society. What positive side does Shaw find in unnatural slavery? In natural slavery? Pleasure after fulfilling needs like eating and drinking. How does Shaw connect freedom with social class? The working class's freedom is just their freedom to change employers. What is Shaw's view on education's role in freedom? Education helps perpetuate capitalist ideologies. What does Factory Acts ensure according to Shaw? Good working conditions are not a guarantee of true freedom. What song does Shaw ironically referred in his essay? Again, very important, Home Sweet Home. What does the key of the secret symbolize? The insecure freedom of the wage earner. Which major historical events does Shaw cite to show ideological control? Again, very important, Magna Carta, defeat of Spanish Armada and Napoleon. What type of tone does Shaw use in freedom? Satirical and humorous yet deep critical. What is Shaw's message at the end of freedom? True freedom remains impossible as humans must always submit to natural and societal needs. Who wrote the essay of studies? Francis Bacon. What are the three main purposes of studies according to Bacon? Delight, ornament, and ability. What does delight refer to in Bacon's essay? Personal enjoyment from studying in private or retirement. How does Bacon define ornament? Knowledge as an adornment in conversation. What is meant by ability in of studies? Studies improve judgment and management of affairs. What type of man only admires studies? Simple men. How do crafty men behave towards studies? They contemn or hate studies. How do wise men use studies? They use studies to guide their actions and decisions. What caution does Bacon give about excessive study? Too much study leads to sloth. How does Bacon compare natural abilities to plants? Abilities are like plants that need pruning by study. What does Bacon mean by studies themselves give directions too much at large? Studies need to be balanced by experience. What does Bacon advise from relying on bookish knowledge? Use studies with practical experience, not only by rules. What attitude should one have while reading? Read to weigh and consider instead of believing blindly. মানে নিজের মতামতটাও জানাও, নিজের আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিংটাও ম্যাটার করে, নট জাস্ট বাই বাইন্ডিং এক্সট্রিমলি হার্ড টু দ্য রুলস of reading a text. For what purposes should studies not be used according to Bacon? Contradiction, confusion, or vain discourse. How does Bacon classify books? Some to be tasted, others swallowed, some to be chewed and digested. What is the value of conference or discussion according to Bacon? Conference makes a ready man. How does writing help? Writing makes an exact man. What is the value of reading according to Bacon? Reading makes a full man. What remedy does Bacon suggest for mental deficiencies? Studying suitable subjects for specific intellectual weakness. What does Bacon say about reading by proxy? Extracts by others should be made only for less important books. How do studies purify the mind? Studies acts as a medicine and cleanser for the mind. What is Bacon's advice about practical men and studies? Practical men condemn studies, but wise men use them. What is the overall effect of studies on a person? They enhance intellectual and moral development. How does Bacon view knowledge without action? Knowledge must be applied, not kept unused. Which famous quotation summarizes Bacon's approach? Read not to contradict and confute, not to believe and take for granted, not to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider. এই পুরো পিডিএফটা আপনারা আমাদের গ্রুপে পেয়ে যাবেন, কমেন্ট সেকশনে লিঙ্কটা দেওয়া থাকলো।